Safety is not just a women's issue, though it's regularly treated like one. Women have long relied on friend groups, as you just heard, to keep an eye out for each other and often face blame when something bad happens to them. It's an issue Boston Globe columnist Jeneé Osterheldt delves into in her latest piece called Text Me When You Get Home. We shouldn't have to say it, but we do. She joins me now. It's good to meet you. Thanks for being here, by the way. Along with Gina Scaramella, who is the executive director of the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. Gina, it's great to see you. You quote in your piece that I just mentioned, you quote Rachel Rollins again, Jassy was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was right where every woman has every right to be. You seem to share her perspective. It's our problem. It's not the woman's problem. How do we fix it?
I mean, it's a community problem, and I think too often women and girls are forced to sort of shoulder the responsibility of not being murdered or raped or assaulted. And it's not something that you can just fix with one thing. It's like a number of things that have to happen. It's a cultural shift that needs to happen. Rape culture is real, and how we, even if you just look at the responses to my column, they're like steeped in patriarchal thinking.
Well, in light of that, and in light of the fact that, as far as I know, men have shown no interest in engaging in the cultural change you talked about, what do we do when while we are being convinced that we do have to do something? What happens in the interim?
In the interim?
Yeah.
I mean, we have to continue to raise awareness. The work that Gina does is a big part of that, and the work that I do is a part of that. Everyone has a part. Everyone has a role to play. Parents have a role to play. Men have a huge role to play in how they check themselves and how they check each other, and how they respond to simple conversation and calls to action is a problem, and that we need to sort of fix. It's a change of thinking. It's a systemic problem.
You know, you were quoted in a couple of places, Gina, saying you don't want a clamping down on women's mobility and their sense of freedom. You're calling for more bystander awareness. Mm-hmm. That's us too, isn't it?
Right, that's everyone. As Jeneé was saying, it's so important for each of us to use the positions that we have to create change. And although these are obviously horrific stories, we have seen more men come to the table. We have...
but they're the aberrations, right? Not the norm for the most part. I mean, men as a group are not... I was going to say belling up to the bar, a horrible choice of images here, but they're not volunteering to engage in this public education thing so that we do act differently, are they?
Yeah, they are. So I guess I want to, as horrible as this is, I do want to give some hope. And we have seen an enormous increase in the number of men volunteering at BARC.
Why do you think that is?
I think because they're invited in, and we're allowing a seat at the table, and we're all figuring out how to work on this together, because it is a human problem and a culture problem and a systemic problem.
You know, I mentioned obviously that Commissioner Gross is having this meeting with the mayor tomorrow, I guess, tomorrow night. The mayor was with us on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie Egan and me on Friday. Here's part of what the mayor had to say, Mayor Walsh.
I've always said that, you know, if you go out on a night and you're leaving a place, whether you're a man or a woman, you're always better to travel together, not be alone. Keep an eye on each other is what we should be looking at doing.
So it seems to me he seems to be saying this thing that you seem to say is not enough, right? Is women shouldn't have to look after each other, even though they do. Again, we have to get involved. Is he on the wrong path as well?
I don't want to say he's on the wrong path. It's something that we all do naturally, like we look out for each other. It's just that shouldn't be what we have to do to keep ourselves alive. Like, you shouldn't feel like you have to turn on your location and share it with several friends to make sure you get home safe. He's right, men and women have to do this. It's just that men don't really have to do it out of a necessity in response to rape culture, whereas women are doing it for a specific set of responses. And I do think that there are men that are stepping up and taking a platform and sharing that space, but this is not enough. Like, we have to get into schools. We have to think about how we're parenting our children based on a set of gender ideals that are just not working anymore.
If you were invited, are you going to this Gross thing tomorrow night, by the way? Are you invited to this?
We might have been as an organization. I just haven't heard about it yet.
If you were, what would you say at tomorrow night? What do you want to see the licensees do? What part could they play?
Well, I think it's great that they're stepping up and that they are willing to play a part.
Let's
because
see
they
how
do.
many show up. I
Yeah,
hope they do. But
they
go
should.
ahead, yeah.
But I think that seeing their role as part of a safety mechanism in the community is important. I think the personal safety measures that each of us take are obviously, things we all do, whether we should have to do them or not, we do them. And then there's everything else. There's, who were these people before they ever went to that bar that night? Were there indicators of violence? What was done about that? All of those things.
What would you like to see government do? I mean, I'm sure you've seen city councilors here have talked about it. There are state legislators that have talked about it. What role is there for government beyond law enforcement to be playing here?
I mean, I think we have to be, first of all, believe survivors. And that's something that starts with everyday people, but finds its way into government easily when these cases go into trials and into police stations. But also, there's a lot of things working against us right now as far as not funding Planned Parenthood and taking away certain protections at college campuses. Those are things that are leaving victims of sexual violence, not just women, but all victims of sexual violence.
I know it's not a short-term solution. You mentioned public education before. I'm a huge believer in educating people out of a behavior, and obviously it's got to start with kids. I mean, we just celebrated on Beacon Hill this new civic education initiative. There should be an education initiative on this as well. That's what you were hinting at a few minutes ago.
Yeah,
yes?
I think it should start young and continue. It should be part of just what you learn in school, part of sex education, part of health education should be what's good and what's bad, what's right and what's wrong, what is consent, what does it mean to say yes.
You seem to both be more hopeful than I am, which I find sort of about the male part of this equation.
Yeah, I mean, what isn't hopeful is that the tiniest bit of our funding is directed at prevention services. So getting out to schools, really being out there at the right developmental milestones to convey the right messages at the right time is something that's a huge investment that just isn't there.
Because there's much more of a focus on law enforcement after the fact? Is that why that you
law
think
enforcement
that is?
And services to survivors are two of the things that are fundable, but those longer term solutions that it's much harder to show immediate impact on are hard to fund.
You were about to say something?
No, I was just thinking just about the things you learn when you're young. I mean, when I was a kid, there was, little boys would grab your butt or play these stupid games like hide and go get it. Or they'd be like, oh, he just likes you if he hits you. Like, these are things that you learn young that make you, A, think your body isn't yours, and B, think it's okay for people to invade your space and do things that are wrong to you. So we're teaching, I guess when I say systemic, I just want people to understand it's more than just increasing police and kind of like looking out your friends. It's also how we are taught, like, who's important and who gets a say and whose body matters.
I hope people listen. Speaking of money, you're doing a fundraising thing. Is that not correct?
We are. We have a Walk for Change, which is happening on April 28th, and you can go to our website, which is barcc.org to learn more.
I hope people will. It's good to see you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.